What's up, everybody? Today we are going to do a video on tinder springs for the 2023 Polaris General XP1000. As most people know, these stock springs collapse over a period of time, and this is going to give it a little bit of height and also better ride quality. Hope you enjoy. As you can see, this is the front right shock. Here's your regular spring, here's your tinder spring. This thing here is completely collapsed. The coils are touching each other. That does nothing for ride quality. Here, the rear, this is the rear right. It has a little bit of spacing in between the coils on the tinder spring, but the new ones are going to be a lot better. Guys, if you'd please like, subscribe, comment on this video, it definitely helps me a lot. Helps out with the algorithm, YouTube, and I'd like to hear from y'all. This is a kit from allthingsutv.com. These are tinder springs. They replace the small springs on your shocks. Instructions. Comes with your 4 springs. There's 2 front, 2 rear. And if you look on them, it will tell you F for front. The front springs have F on them, and the rears have, let me guess, R. Ah, there we go. Yeah. The rear springs have R on them. So what they tell you to do, first things first, is to measure your stock suspension. So I'm gonna go under here, I'm gonna measure the front and the rear, see what my ride height is. You wanna make sure your suspension is kind of leveled out, kind of stable and settled, I guess you could say, which mine is. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure my front and rear. Now on mine, I did crank the front end up a 1/2 inch, which gives it, I think on the front, if you crank up 1 inch, it gives you 2 inches of height. If you crank up the back, it gives you 1 inch is 1 inch of height. So in the front, 1 inch spring is 2 inches of lift. So I did mine a 1/2 inch. So that would have given me a 1 inch lift, just to kind of minimize whenever you hit the brakes, the nose dive so much and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure my ride height real quick, write it down, and then we'll start with the install. Hope you enjoy. On the front, you want to measure at your forward low A-arm mount. That's what you want to do your measuring on your front. You can do either driver's side or passenger side. They should be the same. All right, on my front, it shows about 15 and 5/8. In between 15.5 and 15 3/4. That is the front. In the rear, you want to measure right below the tow hook. So I'm going to measure right here at this plate. And in the rear, I'm about 13 1/8 of an inch. 13 1/8. So on the front, I was 15 and 5/8. In the rear, 13 1/8. Like I said previously, I had cranked up the front about 1 inch, which it should be about 14.5. I think 14.5 inches. It's normal ride height, but I already cranked the front up 1 inch, so that makes sense right there. They're pretty close, but also the front tinder springs have collapsed a lot more than the rear, so that's kind of crazy how the numbers are that much off from the front to the rear. I would have thought the rear was a little bit higher than the front, but we'll see what happens when we put the new tinders on it. Here we go. All right, guys, need to stop here for a second and just to let y'all know, changing these springs out on these shocks, it's not hard to do if you know what you're doing and you have the proper tools. They sell a bunch of cheap tools that you can buy and they break. I actually got a set that I borrowed from my neighbor and I would not dare use them on these. They're made for little like ATV shocks, or I did them on my golf cart springs and I was scared of my springs on my golf cart. So, but you go ahead and you can either go to the auto parts store and rent a set or look at the reviews, because they do have a lot of Chinese made stuff out there that will break. So you definitely got to be careful. Like I said, be safe, be careful. If something doesn't feel right or something doesn't seem right, usually that means it isn't right. So I said, definitely be safe. Don't want anybody to get hurt. I've seen these springs. I actually had one time when I was younger, fly across the shop, me trying to compress it, and it is scary. It can hurt you, and it can actually even kill you. So just to be honest with you. So guys, like I said, read the instructions, watch YouTube videos, call people, have somebody help you if you don't know, or send it to a mechanic or somebody that does know what they're doing to have them changed out. Other than that, y'all be careful. Okay, I jacked the machine off the ground, get some weight off of the shocks. And what I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna go ahead and spray. I'm gonna spray these threads with WD-40. Let them get in there real good, and I'm gonna go ahead and take the shock off, and we'll put it on the bench. All right, we're gonna take the shock off. Take the top off first. I get my... Got a washer. Now the bottom. All right, we got the front off. What we need to do first is we need to loosen this this collar right here. So you need to crank it all the way up to the reservoir. I already sprayed it with some WD-40. I'm gonna go ahead and spray it again. You wanna make sure there's no debris in these threads. It is aluminum, it will gall up on you. So definitely make sure it's clean. Take a brush or something and clean it out. Mine's clean. I washed it the other day. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the spring pressure off of this. We'll take it apart, change the springs, and put it back together. And I know your machine comes with a spanner wrench for this. If you use a 1/4 inch punch, works perfect for taking this off. Put it on here and just start unscrewing it. Spray some more and put a rag under it. Spray some more WD-40 on it. Just loosen it all the way up. It's gonna take a little bit, so I will come back to y'all whenever I get all the way to the top. Okay, I got mine all the way to the top, and I still have spring tension on this. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go get my spring compressor, and we will compress it down so I can take this bottom collar off so we can get the springs out. All right, these spring compressors right here, you can either rent them from your local parts store, or you can go online and buy them. They're not that expensive. These are actually for a car or truck. So what you wanna do is put one on each side. I'm going 2 coils. You want them completely opposite of each other. Put them on. These got these little locking pins that you push in, and that keeps somewhat safety, kind of safe. And then get them snug down and then start compressing it. Do a little bit on one side, do a little bit on the other side. Make sure they are 180 degrees apart from each other. Just crank them on down. Once we get all the pressure off of this cup, we'll be able to take it apart. The biggest thing on this, guys, is take your time and be safe. Also, slide this rubber all the way up to get it out of the way. That's your little rubber bump stop. Oh, there we go. I got it. So you want to take this cup off. That's on the bottom. Pull your shock out. Pull your divider out. And then pull your tender spring out. Okay, now that's all apart, I went ahead and took it over to the sink, cleaned them up. They wasn't that bad of dirty, but I kind of cleaned them up a little bit, got all the rest of the grime and stuff out of it. Let me show y'all something, guys. This is the stock tender spring. This is the aftermarket tender spring. Huge difference. F for front. That's a huge difference in size right there. So that's going to make a huge difference in ride and height and everything. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to go ahead and put it together. Run this collar back all the way to the top. We are going to put, let me take the F sticker off of it. Put your tinder spring on. Seat it all the way at the top. Put your divider on. Has an arrow on it. Right there's an arrow on the divider. That's going to go down. Arrow's going to point down. Put your spacer on it. Now, whenever you go to put these springs together, your coil openings, the beginning of your coil on your tinder and your mainspring, you want those to be 180 degrees apart from each other. Make sure they are apart. That is a definite necessity. So this one I got the up. This one here, I'm gonna put, actually, let's do this because I already got it set like that. We're gonna put this one down. Put this spring on. With it up. Let me turn this around. I'm sorry guys, hold on 1 second, there we go. Just like that. Now I'm gonna go put the collar on. Now what I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna have to compress this spring some more so this collar will go on. So guys, give me just a second. Let me go ahead and compress it and then we'll get it together. All right guys, I messed up. I'd only grabbed 2 coils or 3 coils in 2 spaces. I had to take it back down and grab 3 spaces or 4 coils and make sure I got plenty of space there. Now I'm cranking it on down and I almost got it. So give me a couple more minutes and we will get it done. These coil spring compressors are sketchy, guys. They really are. When they break, it is not good at all. That's why you got to do them evenly. Keep your spaces here the same when you compress them. And do not stand in front of it. Okay, now I got my collar on. It's time to loosen it up. Go ahead and take the tension off the spring. Once again, you want to take them off evenly. Make sure everything's lined up. Make sure your spring coils are completely 180 of each other. Very important. All right, now let's cheat a little bit. Put it on 3. All right, I'm gonna stop real quick, make sure everything is seated. Everything looks to be seated, 180 of each other, seated. All right, let's take it down. All right. All right, guys, let's see here. Everything looks good. It's all seated. We have into the coil there, into the coil there. Exactly 180. Push my bump stop all the way back down. That's it. It's ready to go back on the side by side. Okay, as you can see, I have 2 inches between the adjusting collar and the reservoir. In the service manual, it says the front is supposed to be 1.5 inch, 1.5 inches, and I cranked mine up another 1/2 inches, which would give it an inch of lift. Because every inch on the front gives you 2 inches of lift. So just stating that out. All right, per Polaris, you're to have a 1.5 inches between this base plate and your adjustment ring with a stock tinder spring. This isn't a stock tender spring. Now in the instructions it says crank down your adjuster plate, your spanner nut, until it touches the spring and then crank it another inch. Well, this thing already has a ton of preload on it. You got to do that for preload. It already has a ton of preload. I even contacted All Things UTV and verified with them. They said that is fine, just as long as it has preload. Go ahead and put it on there, see what the ride height is, and adjust it from there. So just want to let y'all know in case you run into an issue like me. But so far, everything's good. This is my second front shock. We'll go ahead and put it on, and then we'll go to the rear. And guys, you want to torque your shock mounting bolts to 51 foot-pounds. Beginning in the video, you can tell I showed y'all how much the front was collapsed. These are the new tender springs on the front. Huge difference. Actually got some springs in there now. All right, now we're going to take the backs apart. Now it says you don't have to remove the shock from the vehicle, but I'm going to go ahead and remove it so I can clean it up. Boom, boom. All right, got this one off. All right, we got the rear shock off. Let's go ahead and WD-40 these threads real good. Say quarter, ooh, that's a bigger. Not a 1/4 inch for the rear. All right, had to get me a drill bit for this side. Holy crap, it is tight. And actually, what I'm gonna go ahead and do on this one, I'm gonna go ahead and put the spring compressor on it to make it easier taking that off. Let's see if this is easier now. Much easier. All right, let's go ahead and compress this spring down and we'll take this off, this cap off. And it is off of there. All right, let's go get this cleaned up. So you can see here, guys, here's the difference between the rear tender springs. Quite a bit of difference right there between the rear. Huge difference. All right, I got everything cleaned up. Let's go ahead and put this bad boy together. We're gonna do tender spring, just like the front shocks. Gonna put the spacer, arrows go down, and also with the arrows, that's where you can put your coil, beginning of your coil, right there on the arrow, because there's 2 arrows on it, completely 180 apart from each other. Go ahead, let me wipe this spring down right here, the bottom. Go ahead and put the main spring on. Put a rag here so don't scratch my reservoir. And I'm going to have to compress this one quite a bit in order to get this plate on. So let's go ahead and do that. Right there, got it. All right, let's make sure our spaces are lined up. There's that one. get this one here. That one and that one. All right, let's go ahead and relieve the pressure on this. Make sure everything is still good to go. As you're relieving the pressure, make sure everything's still all lined up and in place. Good, good. And then go ahead and let it all out. Evenly on both sides. Double check everything once again. Good to go. Looks good. Let's go ahead and throw this on the side by side. And this is the rear tender springs. The new ones compared to the old ones. Huge difference. And we gotta torque these to 51 foot-pounds. It's pretty self-explanatory on how to take them off and put them back on. It's just 2 bolts and nuts per shock. Now you just got to get in it and run it back and forth a couple feet without hitting the brake and without really giving any throttle, and let the suspension settle, and then we'll take our measurements. All right, let's see what we got. We are at 15.5 inches on the front. And the rear looks to be 14.75. Okay, so after measuring it, I did not do any preload on any of the shocks. There was plenty of preload on these springs whenever I put them back together. So I didn't have to worry about them coming apart. But let's see, the front we started at 15 5/8. Now we're at 15.5. Now remember, I did have 2 inches of preload on the front shocks. Now I have 0. So I'm thinking about going up 1 inch on the front and seeing what it does. The rear, we had 13.1/8 factory and then 14.75 after the new tender springs. So I think I had 0.6 of an inch, so a little over half an inch preload on the rear, which was the factory setting. I didn't mess with the rear at all. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go take this for a spin around the property real quick, come right back, and we'll see where it's sitting at then, and we will adjust our preload. All right, so now after I just took it for a little spin, I got just shy of 16 inches in the front and then about 14.5 in the rear. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a 1/2 inch preload on the rear and a 1 inch preload on the front, and let's see what that does. After some playing around, adjusting, wasn't sure, didn't know, test driving, and all the above, I ended up cranking the preload on the front and back 1 inch from all the way up. I come down 1 inch all the way around, which, like I said, the front 1 inch gives you 2 inches, the back 1 inch gives you 1 inch. So I first started with 1/2 inch all the way around. I didn't like it. I did 1 inch all the way around, and I think that's the deal. Stock, it was 15 5/8 in the front, and the rear was 13 1/8. After I put the new tender springs on it, it ended up being 15.5 in the front and 14 3/4 in the rear. That was 0 preload. So I actually lost 1/8 of an inch in the front, and then I gained 1 inch and a little over 1.5 inch and 5/8 in the back. So after go ahead and doing 1 inch preload all the way around, right now I am sitting at 17.5 inches in the front and 16 inches in the rear. They say the rear is supposed to be about 1/2 inch shorter than the front, but I'm looking at my caster. Somebody tell me in the comments which is which. The bottom is low, it sticks in more than the top. I can't remember, I had to Google it, I get that confused. The top sticks out a little bit more than the bottom. So, which I'm hoping that once I go riding this weekend, that it'll kind of straighten out or whatever. So like I said, the front is 17.5, the rear is 16, so that's 1.5 inch difference. I'm fine with that. I'm gonna go ahead and ride it and break it in and then fine tune it later. I am also taking the front sway bar off of this thing, because everybody says take the front sway bar off. It ain't worth the crap. It limits a lot of your articulation and everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the front sway bar off and see what happens this weekend riding. And I don't do high-speed riding. I ride trails and mud and stuff like that mostly, so should be fine. And I will give you all an update on all of my mods here probably in about a month, and let everybody, I'm gonna do a video, let everybody know, you know, what happened, how everything is, what I did to change. If it's something major, I'll do a video on it. So anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something. It's not that hard to do. Just if you don't know what you're doing, if you're unsure, take it to somebody that does, because you can get hurt with these springs. So like I said, just be careful. So everybody, please like, subscribe, comment, share. Let me know what you think of it, and I will see y'all on the next time.